Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Nevermore from Smirk and Dagger Games. This is a card drafting game, but it's pretty much unlike any other card drafting game I've ever played, and I've played quite a few of them as a genre I really enjoy. I'm also not sure what the theme of Nevermore is supposed to be. Is it connected to the poem in anything other than name? I doubt it, but I also don't know what the story is supposed to be. All I know is that you can die and transform into ravens and peck at your enemies until they die, and then possibly come back to life. Neat. But I will say that the game mechanisms are very unique. You're doing card drafting like in so many other games, but the way you draft the cards is different. The special effects you can do feel significantly different. There's just a lot of weird stuff here, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Let's go ahead and take a brief look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back and let you know what I think. Alright, let me give you a quick rundown of Nevermore. This is a competitive card drafting game for up to 5 players, or I'm sorry, up to 6 players. Your goal is to get 6 victory points. As soon as someone gets to 6 victory points, they're going to win the game, unless they're dead and transformed into a raven. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Now this is a setup for 6 players. Each player is going to get one of these heart tiles, and they're going to have 5 cubes, which I guess you don't have to keep on top of the tile, but I think it's a cool thing to do. Those represent your hit points. If you ever run out of hit points completely, you turn into a raven. Now, the thing about being a raven is you still play the game, so don't worry about that. There's no player elimination in this game, so to speak, but so long as you're a raven, you cannot win the game, and it's also, no matter how many victory points you have, so you have to come back. We're going to get to that, but just so you know, that's kind of what's up with the hit points in this game. Each player is also going to start off with 5 cards from the main deck of cards. Like I said, this is a card drafting game. You have these tiles out here that are going to be randomized except for the first and the last in the row. You'll notice that those have pictures of ravens on them. These are the resolution tiles. Whenever everyone gets done drafting cards, you're going to resolve those cards starting from left and working your way right. So you're always going to do the conspiracy of ravens first, and you're always going to do skulking ravens last. However, the tiles that are in the center are going to be randomized, and you're not going to flip them over until it's time for the resolution, so you'll have no information about them while you're actually drafting the cards. You'll have the main deck of cards here, which I'll show you in a second. Then you have the victory point cubes, very inspired, I know. Then you have the light magic and shadow magic spell cards, which you can gain during the course of the game if you draft properly. The last thing is this token, which reminds you of which way you're drafting in the current round. This is going to switch to is going to go around in clockwise order and flip each time you hit to a new round. And the reason why you have to keep track of who is the starting player in this game is not because you're going in turn order, but because if there's ever effects like cards that people are trying to play at the same time, you always resolve them starting from the person who has this tile. So first off, let me show you some of these cards just to give you a taste of what's in the game, what's in those decks before we actually get into the game explanation. Now, in the main deck of Nevermore cards, you're going to find several different things here. You're going to find these, I don't know what you call these exactly, we just call them victory point cards, which these cards, you want to collect them if your main goal is just to collect victory points, which it is for everybody, but again, there's a little more nuance there. These are the light magic spell cards, so you're going to collect these if you have an intent to grab light magic spells. These are healing cards. The more of these you grab, the more likely you are going to heal yourself. These are the opposite of that. These are the attack spells, which are the more of these you gain, the more likely you're going to hurt the other players. And then you have the Raven cards, which are actually kind of bad things to get most of the time. If you're stuck with only a couple of them, they're actually going to be canceling out the other cards that you have in your hand. However, if you get 4 or more of them, you're actually going to have a chance to get some of the shadow magic cards. And if you get every Raven, well then wonderful things happen for you. Now, the magic spell cards. These are going to be usable whenever the card tells you to. So you just hold on to it secretly when you gain one off the top of the deck, and then use it when you want to or when it allows you to. So the penance card here says that you place this in your hand before the resolution phase begins. Each skulking raven in this hand does 1 damage to the player holding them. Then you have freeze, play before the drafting phase begins. All players keep their cards, and you skip the drafting phase this hand. You have Bolster. Play when you are attacked. Instead of taking damage, you gain health in the same amount. At the bottom of the card, it just tells you that, oh, I'm sorry. At the bottom, that happens when you are a Raven. Then you get a different special effect based on the card. So in this case, you play this before the resolution phase, and players cannot attack this hand. So that's a radically different ability. Then there's a bunch of cards in the light magic deck that are just sort of the same thing as the cards that you're drafting from the main deck. You add one of these types of cards in your hand, and it counts as another card of that type. So there's a few of these for each of the different card types. Then you have these shadow magic spells, which are all pretty nasty, as you might imagine, as opposed to the light magic spells. Retribution, you play it when you're attacked, and you instead deal 2 damage to your attacker. But if you're a Raven, you play when anyone is attacked to do 2 damage to the attacker. You have Entrap, play before the resolution phase. Swap hands with the player who passed you cards this round, or this hand. Deny, play when a player or players earn victory points that would win them the game. You reduce their victory points earned by 2, which is just a dick move. And then this is the equivalent of, well, kind of the equivalent of the cards, the drafting cards from the light magic deck. You add this Raven to any player's hand before the resolution phase begins. You may even want to do it to yourself. All right, so let's talk about the game itself and how it's going to work from turn to turn. Now, this is a card drafting game. It's a little bit different than other card drafting games because what you're going to do is you're going to take your 5 cards, which remember are made up of all those cards that I showed you first. You're going to take 2 of them, and then you're going to draft in the appropriate direction. And then the next time, you're going to take another 2 cards and then draft. And then the last time, you're going to take just 1 card. So it's 2, 2, and 1 until you have a brand new hand of cards. Then and only then, once everyone has their brand new hand of 5 cards and everyone's used any magic cards that they want to before the resolution phase, you will resolve these tiles, which, like I said before, stay secret up until this point. So you're going to flip these all over, and you're going to see how you're going to resolve all the different cards. So this is the order in which you'll resolve the new cards that you have drafted. Now, the very first tile, Conspiracy of Ravens. This is what I was referencing before. If all of your cards are Raven cards, in other words, you drafted 5 Raven cards, instead of bad things happening to you, good things happen because you ignore every other tile. You don't resolve any of the other drafting cards, and you gain a victory point. On top of which, every other player takes a damage, and you get a Shadow Magic card. So it is amazing to get 5 Ravens, but it is really hard to do. That's why it's so amazing. Now, the other 4 tiles in the middle here, all sort of mechanically speaking, they all behave the same way. You just get a different effect. And what I mean by that is you're going to look at, everyone reveals, okay, let me restart. You start off yelling out whatever the first tile is. So in this case, it's light magic. Then everyone reveals simultaneously how many light magic cards that they have. For every, whoever has the most light magic cards is going to gain a number of light magic cards from the top of the deck equal to how many cards they played minus whoever has the second most. It's a little tricky to wrap your head around, I know, but just picture it. Let's say that in fact, I think I have a bunch of light magic cards in this hand. I do. So I drafted 3 light magic cards. However, another player off to the side drafted 2 of them. That means I have the most, but I'm only going to get 1 light magic card. Now, for that tile and for any of the other tiles, if there's a tie for whoever has the most cards, then both of those players get the power of that tile or of that type of card, and then you go to whoever would have been in 3rd place. In other words, the new 2nd place person. So if both this player and this player had 3 light magic cards, and then the 3rd player had 1 light magic card, that was the only other player who was close enough, then both of the tied players would get 2 light magic cards off the top of the deck. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of a tricky thing, but it's really not that complicated. Also, if you were unfortunate and you only had 1 or 2 Ravens in your hand, not only are you not going to get anything for those, but those Raven cards have to kill a suit of cards. And you can decide which ones that you want it to kill, but they have to kill cards. So for instance, I could say right now, well, okay, I have a Raven, unfortunately, and I'm going to have it kill this hand of light magic cards. If that's the case, I'm just trying to find a Raven to illustrate this, then you just declare that and say, okay, this is killing, so I'm not scoring, I'm out of the running for that. Then you're just going to discard all of those cards. Also, and yes, I know there's a lot of exceptions in this game, if you end up with a total of 5 of these, they're technically called Radiance cards for the light magic cards, you actually get healed by 2 points and you gain a victory point regardless of what any of the other players have. And you also get to do the normal effect and get light magic cards as well. Okay, now onto the victory point tile. If you have, which is this card here, if you have the most or are tied for the most of these cards, you're going to gain a number of victory points, which remember are your way that you're going to win the game by getting 6 of those. You're going to gain a number of those equal to whatever number of cards you have minus whoever has the second most, just like with the other tiles. There's no special effect for having 5 cards of those. That's its own reward, quite frankly. Then you have the attack cards, and how the attack cards are going to work. Here's an example of one of the attack cards. Whoever has the most or is tied for the most, you're going to subtract whoever has the second most, and that is how many points of damage you're going to deal to one player. However, if your attack is actually strong enough, meaning you have so many cards and your opponents have so few, that you're able to deal 4 damage, instead of dealing 4 damage to one person, you have the option of dealing 1 damage to every other player and also being able to gain 2 victory points just for having done such a feat. So attacks can be very powerful. Next, you have healing. If you have one of the healing cards, which I'll try to find an example of, here you go. If you have the healing cards, you're going to heal. Essentially, same rules as the other ones. For every card that you have, if you have the most, you're going to gain that many points minus whatever the second player is. And for this one, if you gain 3 or more points by doing this, when you're already at 5 health, then you're going to gain a victory point just for having done that. And then finally we get to Skulking Ravens, which is the last thing that you resolve. We have to get back to attacks though. Don't let me forget that, Then we get to the Skulking Ravens. What this is that let's say that you weren't able to, as I call it, shoot the moon and get 5 ravens, but you had 3 or 4 ravens, which means that you didn't have to cancel out your cards either. Let's say you still get stuck with a bunch of ravens, but you don't end up with 1 or 2. You ended up with 3 or 4 and not 5. You didn't shoot the moon, as I call it, but you at least got 3 or 4 instead of 1 or 2. Now, those still have to kill the other suits of cards, but as a consolation prize, you now have the chance of getting shadow magic cards in the same way that you would get light magic cards. Compare the number of ravens you have to whoever has the second most. You're going to draw, subtract that number, you're going to be able to draw that many shadow magic cards. And the last thing I want to talk about is death. Now, through the attacks or through some of the spell cards, it may be possible for you to kill one of the players or more of the players. They turn into a raven. While you are a raven, you cannot win the game no matter how many victory points that you have, but you still take part in the game. You'll never be able to activate, get the benefits of these suits of cards, but you can still draft and become and have the most cards of each of these suits and thereby keep the other players from being able to activate their effects. Also, every time that you do have the most of that suit, you're able to peck at whoever has the second most in that type of suit and deal 1 damage to them. Or if you're completely uncontested in a suit, you can deal 1 damage to all the other players. In fact, if you're able to peck another player to death, you earn a victory point just for doing so, but you still can't win. But, and this is the last exception, if you manage to kill every other player and turn all of them into ravens, you will win the game. So that's a pretty interesting twist there. But that is essentially Nevermore. You're drafting a bunch of cards, trying to use magic spells, all in the goal of either pecking everyone to death or most likely getting 6 victory points. That's usually what's going to happen. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. All right, well, I mentioned in my intro that I have no idea what the theme is, or the story is really supposed to be in Nevermore. That's kind of okay. It's not really anything to get too upset over because it's just a light card drafting game. I play a lot of games like this where the theme is pretty detached from whatever's going on out on the table. Not a huge deal in this particular case. I do like the overall presentation of the game, the graphic design, the artwork, which is pretty spare, to be honest, but still I think it looks good. I could complain a bit about the actual physical component quality. I wish there weren't generic cubes for the hit points and for the victory points, and also the card stock, the quality of that is pretty low. But those are minor quibbles for the most part. This is definitely not game breaking. It still looks good for what it is. Now, as far as the gameplay go, like I said, this is a very unique card drafting game in quite a few ways. First off, just the way that you draft to begin with. It's 2, 2, and 1. it's really odd to me. It's just kind of disconcerting. And I can see pluses or minuses to this. So I like it because it keeps the draft going quickly. A lot of times in any kind of card drafting game, that can take quite a while. People just sit there and like analyze over and over again for the cards in their hand. That can happen in this game, but since you're only doing 3 passes, it's not that huge deal. It's really mitigated by that. But I would say that the negative to that is that one of the benefits of card drafting is that when you've got a whole hand of cards, whether it's 5 cards, 7 cards, 10 cards, whatever it might be, you have a lot of time to see the card. You see a bunch of different cards coming through. You might know that certain cards are going to come back around to you at least one time. There's none of that in Nevermore. There's really not even that many cards in the deck to begin with, especially if you're playing with the maximum player count of 6, which I don't really recommend, by the way. So I think it messes with a bit of the strategy there, but that's partially because there's all the special effects that you can do in this game, like trying to shoot the moon with the ravens. That would be much easier if you were passing around a bunch of cards and there were a ton of raven cards disseminated throughout the deck, and also trying to get any of the special abilities of getting many or the majority of cards in all of the other special tiles. I don't know what to call them. Suits, I guess is what I should call them. So that kind of, I think that's a major part of the reason why you're doing the 2, 2, and 1. But I think that whole aspect of the game is also very interesting. I love any game that lets you, I keep calling it Shooting the Moon because Hearts is one of my favorite traditional card games, and I was actually managed to shoot the moon a couple times in that game, and I thought that was very fun. And it works pretty well here. In fact, trying to get ravens could help you even get shadow magic cards, which can be pretty cool. Although, I would say the biggest complaint that I have about the game, and by the way, if I'm not clear yet, let me just make this very clear. I like Nevermore a lot. I'm keeping the game. I think it's very fun and unique, but my biggest issue with it is the magic cards, both the shadow magic cards and the light magic cards, because it adds an element of chaos and randomness and just take that elements that was kind of unpleasant. And I mean, it's a card drafting game. Of course, it's going to be random to begin with, but that was just like, okay, you're trying to get a strategy going on. You're like, okay, this time I'm going to focus on victory points. Oh, look at that. Boom. We're not passing cards this round. Or look at that. Boom. You lose 2 victory points. That's kind of annoying. And that's the one thing I really don't like about the game. Although it's a testament to the rest of the game that I'm kind of willing to deal with that in order to have fun. I like the fact that you resolve each of the different tiles differently. I like going for the majority, so it adds both, it's got this set collection element with the card drafting with sort of a majority control type deal, trying to get the most that you possibly can to maximize the benefit of the suit that you're going for. Even if you tie, it still could work out very, very well for you. And just deciding how you want to go through it. Do you want to stock up on the magic cards and be very annoying? Do you want to just go straight for those points as quickly as possible, knowing that the other players are going to do that too? So how many points do you realistically think you're going to get by going for those victory cards? Or do you want to go for the ravens? Try to either get the dark magic cards, or if you're really lucky, shoot the moon. I like that you have these different options and different ways to go through it. The whole raven aspect of the game is probably the fiddliest and weirdest thing. As I was kind of mentioning through my overview, there's just a lot of exceptions to this game. That might be another little foible to it, where it's kind of like, well, okay, what happens here? And if this happens, and can you win this way? And there are just a lot of little footnotes and addendums to this game that you have to keep track of, despite how light it is. And I think the raven aspect of the game is the biggest offender of that. But I still think it's very cool, and it is the one thematic element of this game where you might turn into a raven for whatever reason and still be in the game, still able to participate. It's not full player elimination. You can't win while you're a raven, but you might still win the game eventually. And you can definitely make things miserable for the other players by locking them out from getting their card bonuses, by getting a majority and dealing more damage to them, pecking them to death. These types of things can still happen, and there are ways to mitigate yourself dying. It's not easy to die in this game because of the just being able to heal being one of the standard actions you can use with the drafting cards. Although if you take an action to do that on one turn, or if that's what you focus on, in other words, by grabbing the majority of those cards, you're not doing anything else. So there are drawbacks to that. But I did think it was a very interesting, the one thematic element of the game, turning into a raven and just screwing everyone over. Pretty cool idea. So overall, like I said, fun game. It's really, really unique. That's what I think I like the most about it, is that it's not like anything else. They could have easily just phoned it in and made a game about just collecting cards and getting points, but instead they actually went out of their way to try to add some thematic elements, despite the fact that I have no idea what any of it represents. It still felt very cool, and it's definitely one you should try out if you have any kind of interest in card drafting games whatsoever. It feels fresh to me. That is Nevermore from Smirk and Dagger Games. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.